13 things to remember if you love a person with anxiety. Anxiety is tough, isn't it? Not just for the people that have it, but for you, the people that stick with them, while they're going through it. It's emotionally taxing on both ends, it's physically demanding at times, and of course mentally demanding most of the time. Plans have to be changed to accommodate the anxiety. Situations have to be avoided at times. Planning has to be just that bit more thorough. Emotional needs can change daily. It's a lot to work through, and it can be hard to get in their head to understand on top of that. It's understandably confusing at times, so consider this your cheat sheet. 13 things for you to remember when loving someone with anxiety. 1. They are more than just their anxiety. No one likes to be defined by one attribute of themselves. If you truly want to be supportive of someone with anxiety, remind them that you appreciate the individual behind the anxiety. Recognize that they are more than just their anxiety. It sounds like it would be common sense to do so. We don't go around seeing people by one solitary attribute in most cases, but people have a tendency to become blindsided by mental health issues. They are still a human being with all the complexities that everyone else has. Please, remember that. 2. They can get tired easily. Anxiety is exhausting. It seems like the only people that understand how tiring it really can be is people with anxiety themselves. Anxiety causes people to live in hypertense states. They are always on alert, their mind is very rarely settled, and their body is always ready to fight or flight. With the hypertension comes fatigue. Situations that people without anxiety can just breeze through are more tiring for those with anxiety. Ever had a stressful work week, where every day you woke up thinking, wow, I really hope I get a break soon? That's an anxious person's every day, and it's tiring. Remember that next time you're pushing someone with anxiety to be more productive. 3. They can get overwhelmed easily. Tying into the previously noted hypertense state, they're also overwhelmed easily because of it. They're aware of everything going on around them. Every noise, every action, every smell, every light, every person, every object. For someone existing in such a hyper-alert state, a situation that doesn't seem that overwhelming, for example the thought of more than a handful of people talking in a room, can cause their head to spin. When trying to encourage someone with anxiety to go somewhere, just keep in mind that the stimuli you enjoy can just as easily be overwhelming for them. Try not to lock them into the situation. Ensure they know they can leave and are capable of doing so at any point. 4. They are well aware their anxiety is often irrational. Being aware of the irrationality does not stop the thoughts from racing. It does not stop the thinking of hundreds of different worst-case scenarios. If it was as easy as saying okay, that's irrational, no point worrying about it, the majority of those living with anxiety would not have problems with it anymore. One of the worst things about anxiety is how aware of the irrationality they can be. Pointing out that it's irrational doesn't help, they already know this. What they need is compassion, understanding, and support. Very rarely do they need advice on how irrational and pointless their anxiety is, because that's not even advice. 5. They can communicate how they feel, you just have to actually listen. Having anxiety does not mean that they are incapable of expressing or communicating. Unless they're panicking, in which case they likely can't. Don't try to get them to either, they still like to talk and they still like to speak for themselves. They will tell you how they feel. Often when people think someone with anxiety, or really any problem whatsoever, can't or won't communicate, it's because they're choosing not to, and it's usually because the other party has been entirely dismissive the last time they opened up. So next time when you think they're incapable of speaking for themselves, Bite your tongue and give them the opportunity to actually speak. Then take the time to listen. 6. They don't need someone constantly asking, "Are you okay?" while they're panicking. When you see someone panicking and you know they have anxiety, do you really need to ask, "Are you okay?" You already know the answer. Their heart is pounding 1,000,000 miles an hour, their hands are clamming up, their chest is tightening, their limbs are vibrating from all the adrenaline, and their mind has just sunken into the limbic system's fight or flight response. Honestly, part of them probably thinks they're dying. So instead of asking, "Are you okay?" try something a little more helpful and constructive. Good examples would be: remember your breathing. Remember, insert whatever technique that has helped them before. Would you like me to help you to somewhere quieter/safer/calmer? I'm here if you need me. At this point, you should leave them alone unless they ask. You're panicking, it won't last. You've got past this before, you'll get past it again. But the key to all of this, if they ask you to leave them alone, leave them alone. They are experienced in handling their anxiety. Let them get through it however they see fit. 7. They appreciate you sticking by them. Anxiety is rough on everyone involved, which means you too. They understand that. They understand their irrationality. They understand you've not done some things you would have liked to because they couldn't. They're not oblivious to what it takes to support them. If there's one thing in common that you'll find across the board for everyone with anxiety, it's that they overthink. They overthink a lot. Part of this overthinking always comes back to the people that have supported them. Always. Your support doesn't go unmissed, no matter how subtle you may think it's been. 8. They can find it hard to let it go. Part of anxiety is the constant overthinking. But to really understand this, we need to understand where the overthinking stems from. When anyone is faced with a traumatic incident in their life, which most people with anxiety have had more than their fair share of, the memory, if not properly dealt with, can end up stored in part of the limbic system of the brain that the mind uses to determine if we are at risk. The memory is stored in a completely different manner and region of the brain in comparison to an everyday memory that gets filed away. This causes the brain to react differently to the memory. The brain is actively seeking to make links between the traumatic memory and the present situation it's in, partly the cause of the hypertense state. When the brain is caught in this cycle, letting go of things can be very difficult. When the brain is trained to remain in this cycle through prolonged anxiety, letting go of pretty much anything can be a tough task. People with anxiety cannot always just let it go, their brain won't let them, so please don't give them a hard time about it. 9. They can find change difficult, even if it's expected. Everyone has a comfort zone, anxiety or not. Pushing that comfort zone can be difficult for even the most well-adjusted person, so for people with anxiety it can be even more challenging. This is not to be confused with the sentiment that those with anxiety dislike change or pushing their comfort zones, because they will likely thrive once they're actually in the process of doing so. They can just find it a lot more difficult to bring themselves to do so. The one relief people with anxiety tend to get from their anxiety is when they're allowed to be in their place of comfort with nothing major changing around them. When they're faced with a big change and uprooting, it can take them a lot longer to settle back down and establish that zone again. Just remember to have a little more patience and understanding for those with anxiety. They're trying, they really are. 10. They aren't, always, intentionally ignoring you. Part of managing anxiety is controlling the inner monologue that comes with it. Sometimes this can be a very attention-consuming act. The strangest things can set off obscure thought patterns for those with anxiety. If they suddenly drift out of the conversation, there's a good chance they're overthinking something that's just been said or they're trying to calm their thoughts down. Both take immense concentration. They're not ignoring you, or not intentionally at least. They're just trying not to have a mental breakdown right there in front of you. You don't need to ask, "Are you okay?" And you especially don't need to quiz them on what you just said. If it's important, try gently bringing it back up when they seem more attentive. Their mind can be a war zone at times. They will drop out of conversations unexpectedly and they will feel bad for doing so if they realize it. Reassure them that you understand and ensure they've fully digested any important news you may have discussed, especially if it involves them handling some responsibility. Maybe make a note of it too. 11. They aren't always present. As mentioned in the above point, they're not always present in a conversation, but it's not just conversation that can trigger this reaction. Everyday events can cause everyone to get lost in contemplation at some point or another, but for those with anxiety almost everything can serve as a contemplative trigger. They will recede into the depths of their mind quite regularly and you'll likely notice the vacancy on their face. Contrary to what romantic movies suggest, it's not always cute to come up and spook them while they're lost in thought, though sometimes it definitely can be. Gently nudge them back to reality regularly. Remind them where they are, what they're doing, not literally, they're anxious, they don't have short-term memory loss, and to appreciate it. They'll greatly appreciate you doing so. 12. They don't always see it as a limitation, nor should you. It's okay to be an anxious person. Sure, it can be a struggle at times, but it's not always a limitation. Anxiety has molded part of the person in question and ultimately has the potential of bettering them as a person. It can cause them to see the world in a very different way and often this can be for the best. The symptoms can suck, the overthinking can suck, the missing out on certain events can suck, everything in life has the potential to suck. Just because it can doesn't mean that those with anxiety choose to see it that way, at least, not all the time. Remember that part of their personality is the anxiety. Remember that part of them, the compilation of life experiences that they are made of, is the anxiety. It can have some benefits too, and many people with anxiety, when getting better, choose to see them. You should too. 13. They are awesome. Just like everybody else on Earth, they are awesome. That's why you love them, right? It's pretty easy to get focused on the doom and gloom of any issue, especially ones involving mental health, but part of overcoming them is remembering the awesomeness that came before and will come after the issue. Choose to see the benefits. Choose to see the upside of the situation. Choose to see the awesomeness. If they can, so can you. Cheat sheet over. Done. Finished. Keep these in mind and your whole experience may be a lot easier. Then again, it may not be either. We're humans and we're unique. What works for one may not work for the other, but there is one thing that always works: loving compassion. If you take anything away from this article, just let it be that everyone, especially those struggling, deserves loving compassion, so spread it around.